Archibald Mansfield was a private in the Rifle Brigade. He joined the army in a town called Winchester in England in 1906, where the Rifle Brigade had their headquarters. He was sent over to France from England in 1914 in a troop ship, and they were moved around northern France depending on where they were needed. The Rifle Brigade was originally formed in 1815 during the war against Napoleon. This regiment, during that time, was the only regiment where the soldiers would wear camouflage clothing since they would have to move ahead of the army. They were called the Green Jackets since their uniforms were green. Because the Green Jackets would have to move ahead of the rest of the soldiers, they had to march faster than the rest of the army. They would march at about 140 paces a minute, whereas the other soldiers would march at a significantly lower pace, being at about 120 to 110 paces a minute.
This was his reserve certificate, which contains all the information about him, whether it be his physical description or his date of enlistment, which was in 1906. It was during that year that he began his training, which would last about 9 months, after which he would officially join the reserves, and when England entered the First World War in 1914, he would be called into the British Army. And do you have any idea of what training they went through?
It would have been basic infantry training, so square bashing, learning how to march, learning how to look at their equipment.
In fact, the Rifle Brigade's training consisted of marching, hand-to-hand combat, company runs, rifle range shooting, and military terminology. They also learned how to take care of their equipment and how to cook for themselves while they were in war.
But anyway, so my grandfather, my dad never knew him. All we know was that he was a soldier and he worked as a labourer in a warehouse.
Before the war?
Before the war.
Okay.
So in 1914, when the Archduke Ferdinand was assassinated, Britain declared war on Germany, that whole political thing.
Yeah.
The British Expeditionary Force and the Canadians were mobilised and went over the front. And I don't think the Canadians went over in 1914, but they were certainly getting ready for war. And, 3 or 4 months later, he was killed. And that's all we know.
And you say his body was never found?
His body was never identified.
Okay.
These are the basic medals that were given to all the British soldiers who served overseas. To the left, we have the 1914 Mons Star, named after a town where a famous strategic battle was held and where Britain faced defeat. In the middle, we have a Victory Medal, and to the right, we have a British War Medal. These medals were known as Pip, Squeak, and Walfrid, named after cartoons in a newspaper comic strip. Each medal was particular to the soldier. At the back of each of them was the name, the rank, and the soldier's number. Since these medals are only given to the soldiers after the war, the medals were sent to the families of those who died during, which was the case of Mr. Archibald Mansfield. This is known as the Dead Man's Penny, a memorial token given by the king to every deceased soldier's family after the loss of their loved one during the First World War. These tokens were not only given to the British families, but also to the Canadian families, since the Canadians helped the British during the war, Canada back then being a British colony.
It is easy to take liberty for granted when you have never had it taken from you. Never let us forget those who lost their lives while defending their country.